Hello, today I'm gonna tell you about how I got into art block and most importantly, how I got out of it again. Welcome back to Pencils and Stories. My name is Henrike and I make and teach comics, and we're right in the middle of a series about art block. Last week I talked about what I think art block is and most importantly what I think it isn't, and I talked about how often we label ourselves as lazy when we don't do the work that we actually want to be doing. And I had an argument against that. Today I want to talk about my story with art block, how I got into art block, and what the main causes for art block was. And that's important because next week we're going to talk about figuring out what the cause is for your art block if you are currently in art block. And then the week after, obviously, we're going to talk about solutions. Just for context, my art block lasted for almost 7 years. It was a very, very long art block. This is my story. So my art block had a few different reasons, with one very big reason at its core. And once I finally figured that out, I was able to actually start a new story and start Recollection City a year later or something. But first of all, I just wasn't in a very good place mentally. I was still in interpreting school. There were a few things that were just not going well. It was studies, like I had, my studies were delayed, and I had a ton of stress about, doing practical exams and stuff. I had a ton of stress about that. I was learning how to drive a car, and that didn't really work at first. And there were just all kinds of things going on, and especially the stress of not knowing how long I still had to go, basically, in school. That was really stressing me out. And then when I graduated and when I became an interpreter, that's where the real work started, of just going into this job on my own and learning, basically still learning. It's almost like it's drawing. You get better at it the more you do it. So I was still learning and learning and learning. I also was very tired after school. I was chronically tired. So that started the whole art block thing. Like, I was tired, I was stressed out, I couldn't create. So that was one thing. And then there were, in the end, a lot of misconceptions that I had about art that I needed to unlearn. I've had no formal art training. I also didn't have a lot of connections to other artists. So I had a lot of these ideas of it would never really come to me as a concept that I could use reference, for example, for my art. I was very comfortable in drawing what I wanted to draw. I will touch back on that later. I just drew the same thing over and over again, but ask me how to do anything else, I wouldn't know. And that was another thing. Like, I needed to learn a lot of skills, and I needed to learn some knowledge about art making. That was actually, in hindsight, that was holding me back as well, because I came to a point where I wanted to improve my art. I wanted to start creating comics seriously. Like, I had done comics before, but it was more like it was one-shot comics, it was simple comics, but I wanted to make an actual good, professional-looking, good-looking comic, and not just the fun comics that I made for my friends and for magazines for schools and stuff. Like, I wanted to do something longer as well and professional. I needed to learn about story. I needed to learn about art. I needed to learn about color. I needed to learn all the things, and that was really hard because even though the internet was around and I was on DeviantArt, for example, there were a ton of art tutorials. It's really hard to find good quality. It's way better now, but back then, this was 2006, there weren't many online art schools yet and stuff. So it was mostly tutorials that I learned from on the internet, and one is better than the other. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do, so that was a problem. What I actually needed to do was a course, and that was something I eventually did as well. But I'll get to that later when I talk about how I actually solved my art block. So that was the thing. Also, I was very stuck in a story, and that was a story I had made when I think I was around 15, and I got art blocked around 22. So that was a story I had worked on for 7 years, and it's still dear to my heart, but I was just so stuck in the story and I just needed to change the scenery. I needed to let go of the story that I'd worked to death, basically. Very hard to do, but once I did, new ideas started coming, and that helped me. So that's the thing. Also, I needed to connect with other artists. I needed to hear that it is normal to have struggles, that it's normal to have certain kind of doubts. I needed to hear that it's hard, basically. Let me just tell you about the main problem. The main problem I was so stuck was because I felt that I wanted to improve as an artist. I really didn't know how to do it. I was scared. I was like, I'm gonna go start this comic. I tried to start it before with story that wasn't working. I tried drawing. It just didn't really work out. I was intimidated by doing backgrounds. I didn't know anything about perspective. It just looked awkward. I had no idea about composition. I did everything on intuition, basically. And you know, it was better than average, but it was really hard. And I didn't have the necessary skills, so I got really scared. And I didn't know this until years into my art block, when I had a phone call with a friend. And I was complaining to her about my art block and how I really wanted to make this comic and I really wanted to do art, but I couldn't. It's not working. And I don't know what to do. And she knows nothing about art, but she was like, but why? Why is it so hard to create when you love it so much? And then it just came out. It was like this subconscious thing that just came out of my mouth. And I was like, this is it. I said to her, because there's a ton of stuff I need to be doing that I've never done before and I'm extremely intimidated. And that was actually the main reason for my art block. It was like, I didn't know how to do it and I was scared I wasn't going to be able to. That was the biggest thing. I'm gonna start this comic and then eventually it's gonna be too hard and I'm gonna quit. And if I'm not an artist, if I'm not making comics, because that had been my dream for a long time. But if I don't do this, then who am I? It was this really big question of, but if I don't do this, then what am I going to do? And who am I, basically, as a person? Because I saw myself as an artist and I saw myself as a storyteller. So it really was a question of identity, I would say. And that's a very intimidating question. So it's no wonder I was so intimidated and so scared. So that really helped. So I really wasn't sure enough of my own skills, but also my own ability to keep going when things got hard. Because I've been a lazy, like I would use the word lazy for that. I had been a lazy artist up until that point because I was very comfortable drawing the same things over and over again. The same things being just faces. Faces and expressions, that was all I drew. And then I wrote. And that's what I did. And it was very comfortable until it wasn't. And until I developed this desire to actually improve my art and become better. I think the internet helped a lot in that, and I saw a lot of other art and I saw what was possible and I was like, I want that. I hadn't tested myself yet, basically. And now we're getting into solutions, because what really helped me the most was doing a course, a mentored course, for various reasons, because I learned new skills. It was a course on composition. It was at the Oatly Academy. I recommend that course, actually. It's called Painting Drama. If you can do that one, definitely do that one. After that course, I understood so much more about composition. And composition is one of the biggest things that makes a piece of artwork good. Also, I got into contact with a ton of other people. Most of them were better than me. So I could learn so much from them. And not just in their skills, but also in... some had way more experience with art than me. Some already were making children's books and stuff. So they had been through more than me. And I refound my passion for art by talking with these people. They helped me see certain things about the unlearning that I talked about a few minutes back. I unlearned a lot with their help. Like, use reference. You know, go use reference. Do more sketches beforehand. Do a ton of thumbnails, like all of that stuff. It was just, this is how you do art. And there's not really any right or wrong way to do things, except just dive in and expect things to magically happen, because that's not how it goes. And they also shared with me their struggles and how hard it was sometimes, and it just more normalized the struggle for me. Making good art is hard, especially if you're pushing yourself to make better art. Like if you're comfortable just doing the same thing over and over again, by all means, just do that. As long as you feel good about it, you know, it's fine to just be comfortable with your art for a while. I mean, it all depends on what your end goal is with your art. Like it is supposed to be, a lot of times it is supposed to be uncomfortable because you're pushing yourself. And I sometimes compare it to people in sports, like athletes. You wouldn't expect a beginning athlete to just go 5 steps beyond what they can do. They have to build it up, but it's always uncomfortable because they're always stretching their abilities and they're always trying to break their own personal records. And the same is true for art, and that is uncomfortable. And that is where art block, like if the uncomfortableness becomes so big, like it was in me, like if it becomes a question of failure or success, or quitting and going on, those are really big questions. And that was the case with me. And it really helped me to get more knowledge, get more skills, and especially to get in contact with other artists who can help you to keep going. So I started using reference and started to be more structured in my art process. I knew better what I was doing. I understood it better. I had more understanding about art. It really helped me to have very clear steps. Painting drama was extremely helpful in that way. It is a framework that you can use for composition. It's very helpful, and that just all really helped me. And then I let go of that story. It was a big thing. I let go of it. It was hard to let go of it, but it was so great because I just felt the space for something new. And then something new came. And then again, came the whole thing of learning story and learning writing better. Because that was also something I had been doing intuitively up until that point. And then I figured out how drafts work. And I figured out how story structure works. And all that stuff. And I learned it all during the whole phase where I thought of Recollection City. I slowly came back into art again and slowly started making pages. And now I have made 100 pages of Recollection City, and I actually know that with the help of reference and, you know, sourcing the knowledge of other artists and stuff, I know that there's not a single thing in art that I cannot learn. It might take a little longer, but I don't have that fear anymore of like, oh, I cannot do it, you know, or I will fail. Like I know with the right amount of time put in, the right amount of practice, doing the right practices, staying connected to other artists, and always try and see where you can improve. And by keeping the pressure off of that at the same time, and just knowing that it's going to be hard, expecting for it to be hard, and actually trying to enjoy the struggle. It sounds kind of weird, but sometimes it's really awesome to try and figure out how something works and succeeding at a certain point. That's like the satisfaction you get from art, where you've seen that you can do something. And improvement is not constant. Sometimes it takes a while, but I just trust that if I keep at it, it will come. The improvement is there. The breakthrough is there. The new ideas are there. The solution to my problems, my creative problems, my writing problems are there. I only have to find them. And that is kind of a mindset that I have right now. And that really helps me in my art in general, in writing, in business, in everything. Like I can learn it. And there's nothing I cannot learn. So I really want to encourage you today. Like we're going to talk more about how you can find the root cause of your art block, because that's the thing too. Art block is super personal. It's so personal. There's not a one cut thing of like art block is always like, I said a very generic thing. It is either fear or overwhelm, but it can be so many reasons. Like, why are you afraid? What are you afraid of? Why are you overwhelmed? How can you make it better? And even that is personal. So the next few videos, I want to give you some tools so you can start thinking in your brain of where your art block might be coming from, and how you can try to tackle it, because the solution, of course, it's also personal. So I want to thank you for listening to my story. I hope it was encouraging, because if I can, that's what I want to say. If I can beat my art block, so can you. I was art block for 7 years, 2006 to 2012, 13-ish. It was long. But I got out of it, and I'm making my own comic, people. I'm still improving my art. I'm teaching others how to make comics now. It's crazy to me. So if I can do it, you can too. I 100% believe it. It might take some work, and it might take an honest look at yourself, but don't believe you are lazy. Anything basically it starts with I am this or that is something that can really keep you stuck, because that's sometimes, if you are that way, how can you change? If it's part of your character or identity, how can you change? You are a creature of habit. There are certain habits you have, knowledge you miss, encouragement that you need. I don't know what it is, but there is a solution. So I hope this video was helpful. It's maybe a little less practical, a little more on the philosophical side, maybe about the process of creating art, about the art journey we all face as artists, but especially for comic artists. Comics are so elaborate. I mean, the chances of being overwhelmed, getting tired, the chances of intimidation are really high, because you have to draw everything basically, and design and do color and do all the things. So it's a lot. If you are an art block, if you later on experience anything like that, might be short, might be long, come back to this video for the encouragement and try and figure out what it is. See you next week when we'll talk about that. If you want to start something new, if you are stuck with something, maybe you are an art block right now, or you want to start a new story, or you want to start making comics and you don't know how, I have a few things that can help. First of all, I have a course on making comics. It will take you from a blank page to a finished comic. It is for absolute beginners or people who just want to know more about the making comics in general. Maybe you've been going for a while, but you want some new ideas. I have a course called Your Comic Journey. Like I said, blank page to finished, short comic in 10 weeks. There is a notification list that you can put yourself on. It is in the description below. So go there. I also offer mentoring. If you want a more one-on-one approach, there's also mentoring packages on my website. Go to pencilsandstories.com/mentoring. For the comic course, go to pencilsandstories.com/yourcomicjourney. All the links are in the description. If you're just looking for free motivation, because courses and mentorships obviously cost money, if you want something free, I have an email list that I send extra inspiration, motivation, good things I find on the internet, quotes, whatever. I send them to my email list subscribers. So if you want that, you can go to the description as well and leave your email address, subscribe to my email list, and you will also get my new and fresh ebook that is about getting started with comics. If you want to know some of the basics, you want to kind of see if it's for you, then this ebook is perfect for you. It is a reward for new email list subscribers, so go into the description and download it. Subscribe and download it. Speaking of subscribing, you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want the free content that's on here. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with anybody who could benefit. And I want to thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time, for listening to my rant. Join me next week when we'll figure out what the cause is for your art block. Hopefully you're not an art block, but maybe you are. And then I hope it's helpful to you. See you then.